15 years of marriage.
Yeah, my kids.
4 little kids.
4 little
That
kids.
you put in a car on Christmas Day.
To drive over to my parents' house because tradition, right? Like, I know some people struggle in the beginning. We didn't. Like, everything was great for, several
you
years
had your
in our
careers.
Yes. The kids, like, everything was great. And then, once external stressors started really impacting us, because I'm not a big dreamer. I'm like pragmatic planner. Yeah, if you won $1 million, what would you do with it? I hate that game. Like, if I get $1 million, I'll figure it out.
It's like, where are you and Gary at in your marriage specifically that you have enough kind of like tools in your belt to make it work or get through some of the hard things?
This is the Sprinter Mom with Lashes On podcast.
Okay, so I am sitting here with one of my longest, very best friends, Ashley Kinder. She is here to talk all things work, parenthood, and foster care, which is very exciting. I've known Ashley for, how old is Joshua?
He's 11 yesterday.
So about 12 years.
Yeah.
And I would say that 12 years ago, you already knew you wanted to be a foster parent.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm so glad she's here. She's able to talk all things. She's full of wisdom. She is the one I call when I need advice because we have similar families, similar backgrounds, and the same faith. So here she is, Ashley Kinder. Thank you for joining me.
I'm excited to be here.
Can you introduce yourself of like who you are, maybe where you grew up, alma mater, husband, all the things?
Okay, sure. So I am an Arizona native. I was born and raised here. I met my husband, Gary, in high school. We started dating in high school. I was a cheerleader. He was in wrestling, and then we were both kind of nerdy in choir, and that's kind of where we got together, the choir gang. I went to ASU for nursing and became a nurse when I was 21. I graduated. And Gary and I got married right after college graduation. We've been married. It'll be 15 years this May.
Yay!
I know. It's so wild. We've been with each other more than half of our lives because we've been together since we were 16. So 20 years, which is so wild. We have 4 kids. Joshua just turned 11 and we have a 9-year-old boy, a 7-year-old boy, and a 6-year-old girl. So do math in my head.
So you were always pregnant whenever we would start to go out and think we could go and dance together, and then you'd be pregnant again.
I was like pregnant for 6 years in a row, like pregnant or breastfeeding. It was wild. All my kids are a year and a half apart. So every time it was a 1-year-old's birthday party and they're smashing the cake, I already knew I was pregnant with the next kid, which is wild to think about. So I was a labor and delivery nurse. I delivered babies. I think that's so much fun. Like I think it's the best job in the whole world. I got to deliver Maddox,
one of my younger ones.
Yep, which was awesome. And now I teach nursing full time at a university. So
what made you shift from being in the labor and delivery room to teaching, especially since you loved the labor and delivery part, which was also a little missional to you as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved it. All of nursing is a little bit missional. Like you're with someone for the most vulnerable periods in their life. I mean, anyone who's been hospitalized, how scary it is. You're sick, you're hurt. For labor and delivery, you're maybe there for the best day of your life, which is so much fun, or the worst day of your life.
Yeah.
So, but I love growing and challenge and everything. So I went back and got my master's degree actually before I ever had kids, in education, and was kind of teaching on the side and working at the hospital. And then, when my second son, Jackson, was born really early, he had to go to the ICU and he was getting, nutrition through an IV in his foot. And the nurse who was taking care of him that day was a new graduate nurse. She'd only been out of school about 4 months. And when I came in to visit him, because I was still a patient in the hospital, and they were changing shifts and assessing everything, they discovered that she hadn't been managing or assessing that IV all day long. And it caused something called compartment syndrome, where there was too much fluid in his leg. The tissue in his foot where the IV was going in had died because there was too much pressure, and they had to cut his whole leg open. He had to have surgeries because of it, and it was very traumatic. And a couple things from that, like one, she lost her job, that nurse.
Oh, wow.
She was only,
It's
it
that
was
quick.
Yeah, it was 100% an error that was avoidable.
Okay.
And, you know, and I don't know if she was poorly trained, if she was overwhelmed and didn't speak up for herself. I don't know exactly what led to her, you know, throughout the entire day, like missing really critical assessments. But it kind of broke my heart for her because I love nursing. I think it's such an important job, and you work so hard in school, and she only got to do it for 4 months.
Yeah.
And then, of course, for me and for my family and for Jackson, it, you know, had a huge impact. And so that was the catalyst for me to leave the bedside and to teach, because I felt like I had an opportunity to make sure other nurses who graduate get to keep a job. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get to keep a job they love. And yeah. And Jackson's great now. I mean, he's a wild child.
and
Yeah.
fast and
He's fine.
running totally fine.
Yeah.
How did that change your family dynamic, would you say, going from the hospital life to teaching?
Yeah.
And having kids this whole time? You've always been a working mom.
Yep. You know, God is so good, and like looking back on it, it's so cool to see how he just plans everything. But at the time, I was a nurse at the bedside doing 12-hour shifts, weekends, holidays, and all that. My husband was in law enforcement, but he was working a normal like 8 to 5. So it worked for our family at that time. Then right around the time I started teaching, he had a career change too. And now he's a firefighter, and he works shift work 24 hours. And there's no way we could both do shift work.
No.
Like I couldn't be gone 12 hours. He's gone 24 hours. Like it just wouldn't work. So it balanced itself out. It gave him the flexibility to do this job that he loves. And now I get to be home every night with the kids and do homework and not miss holidays and all that stuff.
And be the mom.
Be the mom.
Yeah.
Which that's like all I've ever wanted to be.
Yeah.
A mom.
Always.
Always.
And actually she's probably the only one I know who's mid-30s and still misses being pregnant and having little babies. Still. Like
I do.
It's like your favorite thing in life.
I loved it. And if I had not had like complicated pregnancies, I would have had 10 kids or been a surrogate or something. Like I love pregnancy.
Oh my God.
I know.
Your fields in it and everything. So speaking of loving pregnancy, 12 years ago, we were fostering.
Yes.
And you kind of watched that play out for our family, the good and the bad. Ashley knew the very hard parts of it. And her and her husband, Gary, walked through a lot of that with us. They took the time to build their family with your kids, and like, we'll talk about your house in a little bit, but they took the time to build their family before starting the whole process of becoming foster parents. So what was the decision now with Grace being 6?
Yeah.
Like, where was your mind at that you're like, this is the time?
Yeah. We, so after you guys were the first people we'd ever met who had done foster care. And so after getting to know you guys and seeing, what it was like you said, the good and the bad, but also the need, like there's such a need. We decided to do foster care before we ever had kids of our own. We actually took all the classes.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And back then it was 10 weeks of classes.
Yes.
3 hours a night, like 10 weeks in a row. It was so long. So we got all the way through the classes. I think it was our last class. And then we found out we were pregnant. And so that's kind of, we talked about it and we decided, let's kind of get our family here and then revisit foster care. So this has been a dream for us that's like 12 years in the making.
Yeah.
But now, because my kids were so close and I've had, littles and everything, like I really wanted to, my goal was like, if I can just get all my kids in school 5 days a week, then I'll have this like margin in my life. I'll have this like time that I haven't had, ever.
Yeah.
And that happened this fall. Grace went to kindergarten. It's been great. And so we've been working towards what's next, like what's our next chapter. And I'm really impatiently waiting for it all to
Get started.
hurry up and get started. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's a long process.
It's a long process. So what do you think are like some of the reasons that you and Gary, like, one, now's the time, but two, like, marriage wise, like, how do you feel secure enough to like go through some of the hard stuff?
Yeah.
Or the pain of, because you guys are going into it to strictly foster.
Mm-hmm.
Adoption is not on the table. And maybe it could be the Lord knows. But
Yes.
regardless, you know that you want to help families reunite with their kids,
Mm-hmm.
and which you're a great mentor mom. Like, that would be just so incredible for you guys. Like, where are you and Gary at in your marriage specifically that, like, you have enough kind of like tools in your belt to make it work
Yeah.
or get through some of the hard things?
It's one of those, it's kind of like young people, especially young men who like haven't proposed to their longtime girlfriend and they're like, I'm just not ready. And it's like, you're never going to you might not never feel ready.
Yeah.
There's an element of that. Like there's certainly like fear and worries. Like if we take on another kid or two kids at a time, how much will that change our family dynamic? How will Gary and I still be able to spend time together? Will my kids still feel like they get mom?
Yeah.
There is worries and fears anytime you do something really big, But Gary and I we've walked a lot in 15 years. We both went through major career changes. We both lost jobs. We've had health issues. Like we've lived a lot of life, and we've gone through a lot of counseling, marriage counseling together and separate too, to help us there's like personal growth you do, but when you get married so young, you got married young, like I'm nothing like the 22-year-old bride that I was, and neither is Gary. And so learning to grow together and so last year, January of 2023, we did, New Year's planning as you do, like what are the kinders going to be about this year? And we really, it's really easy to think about jobs and kids and all those things. But we tried to be like, if we're going to do one thing, like if we're going to plan one part of our life first, let's plan the part where we serve God in some way. And for us, the foster care was like, this is the year.
Yeah.
Like we're ready for this calling.
Yeah.
So it was like, our kids are in a good place. We've grown together. We've been through a lot in our marriage, and we have the same goal, in it for our life and for each other and for our family.
So you and Gary made the decision, but how have you like incorporated your kids with the decision, and how have you like prepped them, prepared their hearts, room wise, all of that? Like, how have you basically taken them and said, this is like our family mission and not just mom and dad?
Yeah. So we moved a couple years ago we had like a 5-bedroom, very suburban house, and we moved into a 4-bedroom, 1,700 square foot little ranch style house.
Your house in half.
Right? Yeah, we really did.
Because you had a big house.
Yep. But we did that. The house sits on some land, and so we have animals. The kids call it a farm. It's like a whole thing. Like it's my therapy with the goats and all the pigs and all that. But we didn't have a room. We have 2 kids sharing a room.
Yeah.
And so we went through the construction this year to create a space to be able to do this ministry. And that was the other thing. It's like, if we're going to do this, we're going to have to put some money down. We're going to have to remodel our house and create a bedroom and so it's been a year of preparing and construction and talking to the kids about the reality of what bringing in other kids into our home might do. My oldest, Joshua just turned 11. He's a very type A firstborn. He does not like chaos.
Whew.
He doesn't. Yeah, I know.
He doesn't like the Senters home.
No, he loves coming over here, except if we're the only family that comes over.
Yeah.
He's like, are lots of families going to be there? It's like, oh, so much chaos.
It is so much chaos.
So, we have had lots of conversations with the kids about like, this is something that we are taking on as a family on mission.
Yeah.
All of you guys are going to make sacrifices. We might ask you to help with extra chores. We might ask you to help, feed bottles or change diapers, or just, lose a little bit of the control and the quiet that you're used to.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad in a way that it's taken a year, because we've had a lot of time to talk as a family.
Yeah. And I actually think there's a disservice to the families that take the classes, get licensed, and jump right in. Because if you don't have anyone that you've maybe seen them do it before, you haven't had the time to really prepare your hearts. Because now, how long are the classes now versus the
5
10
weeks?
Okay, 5
Yeah,
weeks.
they cut it in half.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because they need foster parents.
Yeah.
But then you also don't want ill-equipped people bringing in kids and then having a disruption based off of that, which is sad. So yeah, I think a year is great.
Yeah, it has felt long. Construction is just,
Yeah.
construction is just so chaotic when you bring it into your house. But also I feel like everyone's really ready and excited.
Yeah. So what are some fears that maybe your family had? Not just you and Gary, but what are some fears that family had?
My family is very traditional. Like, everyone lives here in Arizona. We see each other all the time. Holidays are a huge thing, and they don't like change. I think Gary and I are probably the most comfortable with change of anybody in my family.
And you don't even change that much.
It feels
well,
radical.
not in our world, but
that's true.
We love change.
We're not the Senters level of change. Yeah. So, my parents voiced very bold concerns. Like, we're not shy about sharing, like, how are you going to be a good mom to the 4 kids that you have when you're taking on more kids? And these aren't normal kids. These are kids with behavioral issues. These are kids who, have been exposed to drugs, and like, they're going to take so much of your time. How are you going to be a good mom to your kids? And that's like one of my deep fears. So to hear that voiced is like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? They worried about, like, bringing in, well, how are we going to go on family vacations if you have these other kids with these other needs? And are you going to be asking us to babysit these kids? They're looking at it as how's this going to affect me? And I think that's a normal, for someone who's never done something like this or seen it done. Like, those are probably very normal questions, but it's good that it's been a year, because it's given everybody time to sort of adjust.
Yeah.
And now I think my whole family is really excited.
Yeah. That's awesome. So you actually had the chance, you and Gary, even before you were licensed, there is such a huge need in Arizona that the agency actually reached out to you and asked you to do respite at Thanksgiving time.
Yep.
So over a holiday, you did respite for 2 young boys.
Yes.
How did everyone acclimate to that? And was it practice, kind of?
Yeah, it was totally practice.
Okay.
It was an awesome experience. And it was on a major holiday on Thanksgiving. And so I didn't quite know how my parents would feel. Like, hey, can we bring a couple kids you don't know to Thanksgiving? But they were great with it. My mom even watched the boys a couple days when I had to go teach. But we had them with us for 12 days. And by the end, when we were, getting ready, knowing that their foster parents were coming back in town, like, my parents were really sad to see them go. So in that short time of 12 days, even my parents and my grandma had like bonded to these kids and really invested in them. We took a bunch of pictures, like, my kids have little bulletin boards in their room of pictures, and they all have a picture up with these boys.
Aww.
And they still talk about them. And it was a really good first experience and exposure. And the saying goodbye part for me and for the kids was definitely hard. I cried when they left,
But that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, then you made it through the first hard one.
Yes.
Can you imagine it being 30 days? and then saying goodbye?
Yes. Like I think I will probably cry every time, and I think
Yeah.
that's probably okay.
Yeah.
Our foster care instructor who did our classes, she did babies mostly, and she said every time she had to say goodbye to a baby, she would get rid of all the decorations in the nursery and redo it, and that was her like cleansing and
Wow.
like moving on, and helping her like heart heal was to
Huh.
like reset the nursery every time.
Oh.
Yeah. So I kind of like that idea. Well, decorating's fun anyway, but when I was a bedside nurse, I worked in the NICU for a couple years, and it's like that. Like you go every day and you take care of, a baby, and you love on them, you hold them like for days and days and days or weeks or months, and then they go home. And so I feel like God has kind of prepared me in a way to love on this sweet little vulnerable human, and then be able to say goodbye when I have to.
I love how you were mentioning that your parents and grandma were even a little sad, because I think it's so cool that like this isn't just your family with your 4 kids and you and Gary, but like actually giving kids a chance to see what a big family can look like. Because I feel like so often, especially a lot of kids in foster care, either maybe were raised by grandma, or they have so many distant like relatives that aren't a part of their life, that to actually see like, oh, mom can have a mom and that mom can still have a mom, and you guys can see each other and do things together, and big and little, it's not just holidays for your family. You see your family often. Yeah. So I think having kids see that example is really cool. And also the boys probably picked up things from your mom that they didn't pick up from you, or maybe even your grandma that they didn't pick up from you.
That's so true. And it's funny, the older boy was 6, and he was fascinated with how everyone was related. Like he wanted to know everyone's.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And who is your mom and who is her mom? But the hardest, like that just got me so much. The hardest part was when they arrived, they were 6 and 4 and had been in foster care for years. And so he asked me, he's like, Miss Ashley, you have these 4 kids. Who's their mom? And I said, I'm their mom. And he's like, no, but who's their real mom? Like the idea that the kids were just living with their mom was really hard for him to grasp. Yeah. Like he asked many, many times, like, but who's their real mom? And that just broke my heart.
Oh, I know. Gosh, that's awful. Okay, let's do something happier. So I would say you and Gary were the first ones that you were like the youngest couple we ever met that legitimately had a great house in a decent neighborhood, like where we used to live. Yep. You guys were like working full time, didn't have kids, had a mortgage, very responsible, had 3 rescue dogs that were all sorts of weird. And then you moved, to another house in Chandler. Like you guys were always in nice suburb areas. And then one day you called and said, Gary was on Zillow and we want to lead a simpler life. Yeah. And cut our house in half and leave our fake grass backyard. Yes. Because we both have had the experience of having fake grass, which is enjoyable for a while. Yes. But not if you have dogs. Right. So what kind of led your family to switch, like basically your environment almost completely?
Yeah, it was a little bit COVID related. Like this happened during the pandemic. So, so we have 4 kids. I think 3 out of 4 were in school at the time, and everybody went home on computers, right? So trying to manage 3 kids, little kids, on a laptop was insane. Plus I had to teach from home on a laptop, but I had to teach live. So I had to be live streaming to my class while, 3 little kids are trying to do school and a toddler. And then Gary was a firefighter and he's going out into the community, which for a time was really scary. Like, I don't think Gary was ever that scared, but I was scared.
Oh, Gary, gosh.
He's like, I'll be fine.
We could do a whole podcast just on Gary. He is such a character.
I know.
I forgot about his hazmat suit. Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yeah, he did not take the whole COVID thing very seriously, but he was going out all, into the community. And so, and the rest of us just all felt stuck, everyone like stuck in this house and stuck on the computer. And so he was on Zillow at night, like one night when he couldn't sleep at work. And, he saw this property in South Phoenix, and that was where our first house was, really, really close to there. And he got this like crazy idea. He's like, what if we sell all this and we just downsize and we have land? And I don't know what it is about men wanting land. There's something.
My gosh, Ryan's on a kick right now. Acreage? Did you say acreage? Animals?
I don't quite get it, but yeah, like the idea of having land. And I was like, okay, like, and so I was like, Gary, this is crazy. Like, we have this beautiful house that's perfect for our family, And he asked
what,
me,
mind you, was also like, what, 3 minutes from your mom's house?
Oh,
right?
yeah. Like across the street.
Yeah.
Yes. We had everything right. Like we were set. Everything was great. But he looked at me and he's like, what is your dream life? And I was kind of like eye rolling because I'm not a big dreamer. I'm like pragmatic planner. Yeah. Like if you won $1 million, what would you do with it? I hate that game. Like if I get $1 million, I'll figure it out. Why? Like think about it now. He's like, what is your dream life? Like if you could have any life. And I was like, well, I don't know. Like I love animals. Like I would love to have a horse someday. Like I've always wanted to own a horse. And he's like, holding his phone up with the Zillow listing. And I was like, really? Like you want to do this? So we thought about it. And then, he loves telling this story that he got into his car one day to go to work and he turned his car on and, his phone's connected to his car, Bluetooth, and normally like iTunes will start playing a song or whatever. So for whatever reason that day, instead of iTunes playing, the Bible app started reading out loud to him.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because it was probably open or something.
I don't know. Like he didn't think so. Like it was like, from God to him, like speaking to him from his
Bible app.
Experience. Yes. And it was 1 Thessalonians 4:11, which says, lead a quiet life, work with your hands, and earn the respect of others. And that just like, it was like a lightning bolt for him of like, this is what we're supposed to do. Like, let's teach our kids to, practical skills. Let's be hardworking. Let's have this adventure on this property. Like, let's get out of, I don't know, the status quo
and suburban life.
Yeah. And do something wild. Like none of us had ever owned animals other than dogs or lived anywhere like this. So it was like an adventure, and it has been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love the farm.
So what are, of the farm, like what are some of the animals that you've taken on?
Yes.
What does your morning look like before getting the kids off to school? Or do you come home and work on some of the things? Tell us about your animals.
Okay. One thing you should know if you get acreage, tell Ryan, people, when they hear you have space, they'll be like, oh, you have space. Do you want these goats? They drive me crazy. And that's what happened to us. Like, I think I bought chickens. I remember that, or actually Gary brought them home to me as a Mother's Day gift.
Thanks, Gary.
It was actually like the best Mother's Day ever. He brought me home baby chicks. But other than that, we haven't purchased any of the animals on the farm. Like it has all been.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Even the pigs?
Mm-mm.
Wow.
It's always like, oh, you have space. Do you want them? We don't want these animals anymore. So we have chickens and ducks. And then we got 3 pigs when they were babies, and their brothers. And they're pretty standoffish. It's sometimes a game to see who can catch the pigs.
Oh yeah, it's so fun.
Yeah,
we'll share a video.
And we got 4 goats. We have 2 boy goats and 2 girl goats. And then we have 3 alpacas, which came from a fellow firefighter. Yeah, they had alpacas and horses, and they wanted more horses. And so they were looking for a place for their alpacas to go.
And what's the purpose behind alpacas? Do they graze? Are
None
they
of our
just like,
animals serve a purpose. I guess the chickens make eggs.
yeah.
But you do shear the alpacas once a year.
Okay.
And then their coat can be spun into wool. And
Yeah.
so I've given it to my sister's mother-in-law, and she has made stuff out of it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of cool.
I was like, you need it. I guess it's like a ton of work. Like it's a hobby thing.
oh.
It's not like a practical thing. It's like a crafting experience. But you can sell it. You
Yeah,
can
I've
sell
actually heard you can sell it too.
Yeah. So, but no, they're just, they're really just fun and therapy for me. And if I was a morning person, that's one of my 2024 things is to try and get up earlier. My morning routine.
You hate the morning.
I hate the morning. And that's not good for someone who lives on a farm. My morning routine right now, and I think I'm an outlier on this, and I know that, and it will certainly change when I get foster care. But I get up at 6:45, and we leave the house at 7:45. So I get me and all 4 kids fed and lunches packed, and me ready for work, and we all leave,
which is
an hour.
unreal to me. Completely unreal.
Some of it's the age of my kids, like they can all pour their own cereal now, and like I said, it might change as we get new kids.
So then you drop them off and go back home and do the farm chores?
It depends on my teaching schedule. Yeah. But I actually really like my afternoon and evenings is my favorite, because that's when I'll let all the animals out to graze. And so they'll come up to the house. Sometimes we let them in the front yard, and, neighbors go by and see them and everything. And that's when I spend time with them.
Yeah.
And so that's when I'll do a lot of the chores and stuff is actually in the afternoon or the evening.
Yeah. You can strip out of your work clothes.
Yes.
And get cozy.
Get my boots on.
Dirty.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Hay bales and mucking out stalls and everything. That's it is like therapy. It's exercise. That's my,
Everything.
I love it. Teaching the kids how to do it.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Okay. So you're a mom of 4.
Yes.
You're about to add
Up to
1 to 2.
Mhm.
Yeah. You have space for 2. What are some of the things, especially because they've all been so close together? And I am still, it's funny because I'm like, I have no hacks. Like I have no hacks of being, sometimes I'm like, it's kind of like Priscilla. Sometimes I feel like you're just like going with the flow of the week and figuring it out. But like, are there some things in your house that you've put in place that at least give your kids some order to the morning or to the night? Or what are some routines that you've put in place that you can say, hey, we have a lot of kids, but it works because we do this, this, and this?
Yeah, totally. That's the only way I could do it. Like my sister has 2 kids and she's not a routine order organized person. And
she's not the first child.
No, she's not the firstborn. She's the middle child. So like one thing for me, especially when I had so many little kids, was snacks. Like the constant wanting snacks, asking for snacks drove me nuts. So like I made a schedule on the board, like when they were littles, before preschool, and they've known forever they can ask for a snack at 10 a.m. and at 3 p.m. Like those are our snack times. So even now when they're in school, they get home a little after 3 and they know they can have a 3 o'clock snack. And then there's no more snacks for the whole day.
And then they eat dinner.
And then they eat dinner. So like that's one, and the snacks are where they can reach them. So when it hits 3 o'clock, they know they're allowed to go pick out a snack. I do try, when they get home from school, like everyone has to unload their backpack and put everything away, lunches, water bottles. Everybody has to do their homework first. So they'll sit at the table with their snack and do their homework. And then we can play, then we can. Now it used to be like play outside. Now it's like
so cold.
Yeah. And they're getting older and they just want to do Fortnite, So to me, it's like, I know a lot of people worry about screen time.
I was just going to ask you.
Yeah. I like to see, like, we do homework first. I like to see my kids go outside, whether they're helping me with the animals or we got a trampoline this year for Christmas. So like if they've gone outside, like throw the football, jump on the trampoline, at least a half hour outside.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the evening, if they end up on video games, if we watch a family movie, like I try not to stress about it.
Yeah.
If they've done their homework and they played outside, then
yeah. That's enough. How do you, like for me, the screen time, I'm like, the older I get, the less I care, but also the worse their attitudes are, I would say, if they have a ton of screen time and like now that their games are getting older,
Yes.
like as we've adjusted to certain games and things like that. My problem is the number of kids. So right now I'm deciding like, even if I say you have a half hour, then it's like, but I want to play on this and he's playing on this. So when do they play on that? And like ours is just nuts. But like, I'm also like, they are in school all day.
Mm-hmm.
Their brain is going.
Yep.
If that is the way they wind down, like not everyone winds down with video games.
Yeah.
Like my brother was a video game guy. Ryan never was. And so I'm like, you read or you do a sport or you watch TV. Like we're TV watchers. I love TV. Or you're like, you even watch shows sometimes while you're typing or working because you can multitask like that. Like
it's true.
It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
And I think our kids are going to grow up and be good human beings, not because of the screen time, but because of the parenting and the full picture of everything you've done.
Yeah. And it's just balance, it's like if you identify something in your life that you realize is becoming so important to you that you can't go a day without it, or it's the first thing you want to do every day, whether it's drinking, whether it's, caffeine for adults, for kids, like if every day the only thing you want to do is screen time and you can't find joy in anything else, then maybe we need to have a little screen time fast, like maybe we break that up, like, but otherwise, yeah, like you said, like we live in a different age, like,
and we have to navigate through it.
We do, which is really hard. I let Joshua have his maybe second or third sleepover this last weekend, and that was a little bit stressful because that also, like, I did sleepovers all the time when I was a kid, but it feels different now than it used to.
Because you can't control kind of what's going on in someone else's house, what they watch. I'm actually afraid sometimes to have kids over from the school because we both have kids in a private Christian school.
Yes.
And I'm like so worried because I think because our kids are older, we've watched, we've seen all of the Marvels and we've gone through Stranger Things and like shows that a typical Christian conservative family wouldn't necessarily let their kids be watching, but we've like talked through a lot of things. And so anyway, now I have like these kids coming over to my house and I'm like, oh shoot, like what songs am I listening to on the radio?
Yep.
What are they watching? Are they going to do Fortnite, but they're not allowed to do Fortnite in their house? Like I worry about those things, or like catching my own kids if they're watching something they're not supposed to be watching. Heaven forbid, like they show something to a friend and I'm not even aware they were seeing it in the first place. So like those are the things that I'm always like conscious of. What are they watching? Who's coming over? What are their family values? Because I definitely never want to step on someone because I know my family's like more loosey-goosey. But it's, it's just different. Yeah. Sleepovers and all that.
Yeah.
Also, I hate sleepovers because they don't get sleep. And I'm actually very much anti-sleepovers recently, but it depends on the family.
Yes, it
and
does.
The sleeping arrangements.
Yes. A lot. Joshua has a lot of friends who are single kids, like only siblings. And so that's interesting too, because when he goes over there to their houses or whatever, they always take him out to eat.
Oh, it's so special.
Yeah, it's so special. Like he gets to do all these fun and special things, and then he comes home and he's one of 4 kids, and like, Mom, why can't we go out to eat at, where did he go? Postino's.
Oh my gosh.
That's
like, so classy.
Because you're 11 and
we're not going to
We're
Postino's.
A family of 6 and we're not going to Postino's for lunch.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh. I grew up with a best friend at school and she was an only child. Yeah. She was actually an adopted only child. And her parents often took me on trips. And that was so cool because I wasn't used to flying. Like my family usually drove to California. I wasn't used to flying in airplanes or doing fun things like that. And it's cool.
Yeah.
But also how boring. Like the kids are always like, what would you do if it was just 1 or 2 of us? And I'm like, I'd probably be really peaceful and sleeping a lot and reading a lot of books.
You've
But
read a lot of
that's not
books.
what God has planned. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Let me check what time it is because I don't want to take too much of your time. Okay, 10 minutes. So, oh wait, hold on. Mandy. Okay, no, we're okay. Do you have to pee?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Okay, we're good. So oh, the children. I think that one of the things I love about you is how open you and Gary have been about your marriage or struggles or things you come into. But you guys have also always been open to counseling or
Mhm.
therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And then now, specifically, you guys have gone through a marriage group at your church and
Yeah.
then led the marriage group.
Yeah.
What would you say? I love talking about marriage. And what would you say is like the desire of your heart when it comes to working with couples and saving marriages, or maybe, giving marriage tools? Like, how did your heart come to that? Because really the foster care and the mission of helping couples.
Yeah.
But how would you say, especially because you got married young, with therapy and different things, what are some tricks that you guys have learned that allowed you to grow together and not necessarily individually?
Yeah. For us, what sort of led us down the road where we're like, man, I think we need some counseling. Because everyone, you get married. I know some people struggle in the beginning. We didn't. Everything was great for several
You
years.
had your
of our
careers.
marriage. Yes.
Yeah.
The kids, everything was great. And then once external stressors started really impacting us, Gary lost his job, and then several years later I lost my job and stuff like that. That's when we started to see cracks in this foundation. One of the biggest things that we had to learn is what you unknowingly, subconsciously bring into a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is usually from your upbringing, from, your parents' marriage or what you witnessed or previous relationships. But learning how to unpack that is something that for us, we needed help with. We needed someone to sit with us and ask really great questions to help us understand what are those expectations that we've brought in, or habits, or just ways of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there are really self-reflective people out there who can figure it out on their own, but it was so eye-opening, and it helped me see Gary and understand him so much better. So we came from very wildly different upbringings. My parents were Christian. They're still married. They've always served in the church, always served in marriage ministries.
Yeah.
I remember them having arguments, but never was I worried for their marriage.
Yeah.
And they always modeled good communication and all these things. So I thought I was entering marriage with just this amazing foundation, which in some ways I was.
Yeah.
Gary was raised by a single mom, who they divorced when Gary was 5.
Mm-hmm.
Very nasty, messy divorce. They still can't be in the same room together. His parents.
Years later.
30 years later, and
Oh
they cannot be in the same room together. There's still so much anger and hatred there.
Oh.
And so he grew up with basically no dad and no view of marriage. And so you shove those two people together, and we're trying to make it work. And so through counseling, we learned what are those things we brought in, and how can we see one another? There's this desire, and the program we went through at our church is called Reengage. And they do it all over the U.S. At there's 300. No, that's not right. There's a lot of churches doing it. I don't know the number. But one of the pillars is, if you will draw a circle around yourself and work on everyone inside the circle, that's how God will transform your marriage. And so that's kind of a running theme throughout is like stay in your circle, which means you can't change your spouse. And praying for God to change your spouse is also not it. Yeah. Like, but what you can do is grow your relationship with God, become more like God, allow his love to be magnified in you so that you love your spouse better. And that's the transformational power.
Wow.
Is the closer, and they do this like triangle thing. They said, if picture a triangle, if God's at the top and then the wife is here and the husband is here. If the husband and the wife both move closer to God, then they're also moving closer to each other.
Yeah.
And so, God loves marriage. Like one of the things, the point that brought us to probably our most difficult point in our marriage, I realized like that when we stood at the aisle and we said, I do to each other, that yes, we were making a promise to each other, but really we were making a promise to God. Like we were making a covenant with God. God, I promise you, I will stay by this man's side for the rest of my life.
For good or for bad.
For good or for bad. Yeah, for good or for bad. And so once you, when you set your eyes on God and his goodness and his love for you, it allows you to love this other person, even when things are really hard and even when you don't feel like it.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to think it's about your spouse, but it's not. It's about God has been so faithful to me. And so I'm going to be faithful to God and stay and work.
Yeah.
And it's been transformational. It really has. And so I just, my message for married couples who are struggling, is that God desires you to stay. Like God desires your faithfulness and your trust, and he can work miracles.
Yeah.
We serve the God of miracles.
Do you think that, because like how you're mentioning, your mom and dad have been together so many years,
40 years.
Yeah.
I think,
And, Christian household, I grew up the same way.
Yep.
And you always think, cause I'm like, I don't need therapy. Nothing's wrong with me. I had a great childhood, and it's true. I did. But like you said, there are things you bring in subconsciously that you're like, that would affect a marriage when he did not grow up maybe the same way I did, or unspoken expectations or whatever they may be. We've picked up things from our family, and our parents are amazing and our childhoods were great, but there's still stuff that you pick up that you're like, but where like, oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought because I'm like, I love marriage so much. Where do you see like, because the rate is so high, like what's your desire, I guess, for future couples or for your own kids? Like our parents have made it this far. I would imagine they haven't told us, but there might've been some dark times that maybe we don't know about.
And they haven't told us. And
and they like don't talk about it. And it's like, do you think for our kids, and sometimes the kids will see me cry and you're like, mom's having a tough day. Like, what do you kind of share with your kids that they see marriage is hard? This is not a fairy tale. And like, but I will love, because I've committed, and I will love this person. And like, what do you desire, I think, for your kids in their marriages or people around you?
Yeah. I think that's one shift, and even in the church, that is so encouraging, is groups like this, like Reengage, where as Christians, we don't put on this front that marriage is great and easy, and if you love God and love each other, everything will work out. But that we talk about the mess that it is. When you put two imperfect, broken people together and say, live your lives forever, like we're two sinners, and so to be able to talk about it openly, like, is such a great culture shift in the church that I think is happening. So that would be one, is to like, because my parents never talked about any struggles in their marriage. And I had such guilt and shame
when you did
seeking marriage counseling. Because I was like, my parents never needed this. Why do I need it? So being able to talk about it. I think for my kids, You know, our culture tells us you need to find someone who will make you happy, right? That's the message is find someone who will make you happy, who will meet your needs, who will fit into your life, and it's so self-focused. And so my hope for my kids is that they know that that they can always be real with me, that I will be real with them. And it is a hard balance. How much do you share?
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that led us into marriage counseling was that when we would argue loud. And as our kids got older, they would start overhearing the way we spoke to each other. And I remember one time our kids, as we were arguing late at night, we thought the kids were in bed. They got out of bed. They together wrote a note and slipped it under our door.
Oh my
as we're
gosh.
arguing.
Oh my gosh.
It said like, Mom and Dad, please stop fighting. Like, we know you love each other. Like,
and you know, Joshua was leading the way.
Oh, I know. I'll never forget it as long as I live. So yeah. So like, you know, having open conversations and being able to admit Mom and Dad are wrong.
Yeah.
Like, Mom and Dad messed up. Like, we should not have spoken to each other that way. Like, that's not what God would desire for us. And, but then, yeah, do not seek happiness, seek holiness. Like, seek someone as our kids are getting ready to get married and finding whoever, you know, whoever that may be. I hope I'm the best mother-in-law, by the way. Like, that is one of my goals. I want to be the best mom-in-law. I'm going to have 3 daughters-in-law.
Yeah. So you have to really.
Yeah. Like, I want to be like, you know, supportive. I want to be someone who they like can come to and like place, you know, little expectation other than just, So,
and not like controlling your sons and being like,
my babies.
Yes.
I want to not do that. So you can be my accountability partner.
Best mother-in-law.
Yeah.
I'll be doing the same thing. So
you're going to have
I'm
too
like,
many
oh, you
in-laws.
don't want to be a part of my compound and cult? Oh, I don't know that you can last in this family. You won't move where we move.
Yeah, right.
You're out.
I can't even imagine.
Oh
You're going to
my
have
gosh.
so many in-law
I know.
children. Oh my goodness.
I'm mostly worried about, it's a lot of, girls are hard. Like, it would be one thing if it like just, you know, Pima, Brooklyn, and Little Miss like had a great man, and then you would feel secure, but you also know like the girls kind of hang on to their moms, and it's like, okay, I have this, they're always going to come to me.
Yes.
But then you have these men that hopefully through our husbands, I feel like they're in a new era of like men talking about hard things. So that's a change. But like your boys finding someone that also fits the family, supports them, and likes you. And like, am I going to like her mom? I don't know. I hope so. I hope I'm friendly enough that I like her mom. But like, in my case, what if she doesn't even speak English? Like, I'm screwed. I gotta learn Spanish fast.
Yeah, you really do.
I really do. But yeah, it's scary.
Well, you know, this is the first year where we did not do Christmas at my parents' house. Christmas morning was at my house this year for the first time. 15 years of marriage.
15 years of marriage.
Yeah, my
4 little kids.
4 little kids
that you put in a car on Christmas Day
to drive over to my parents' house, because tradition, right? Like tradition and like wanting all your children to gather to you has been such a hard subject to broach in my family. So I want to be, you know, the type of mom-in-law or whatever who can say like, we'd love to join you. We'd love you to join us. If we need to do a different day, like, you know, like we want you to have an amazing Christmas. We'd love to see you, but there's not like pressure and expectation.
Yeah. And I do.
Great.
Oh, it sounds great. It's going to be perfect down the road. And I do love the idea of different day.
Yeah.
And because I think being flexible in that is nice, because when you do have in-laws in town and you're trying to split it up, like now that we've experienced driving to 2 to 3 homes when our kids were babies, and they're all exhausted and crying, and it's miserable, and no one likes it. That's not a holiday.
Yeah.
Oh, it's work. And so, I think having that flexibility and saying like Christmas could literally be any day you want. I mean, you guys, Gary's a firefighter,
right?
Like Christmas or Thanksgiving can be any day you want.
Yep.
Around that time.
Yep.
Yeah. That's great. Always adjusting, always figuring it out.
Gotta be flexible.
Gotta be flexible. Well, I won't keep you too long. I will always have Ashley back because she is my go-to for healthcare, marriage, parenting, family issues that we're both the first child and we kind of carry some of the first child responsibilities and aging parents, all that fun stuff. I can't wait to talk about maybe delivery and baby things.
All the things.
Yeah.
I can't wait to have another baby to snuggle and hold.
know. I made sure Ashley came on before she started foster care because I wanted to hear the pre to what it's going to be like in the midst of it. And I can't wait to talk to you when you do have a placement in the state of Arizona, and encourage all of you to sign up and do that, because it is a temporary thing and you're blessing a child and really making an impact probably on there forever. Like your legacy is not just going to be a kinder legacy, but for, generations to come of little kids that you can really, your whole family can serve. And that's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
Love you.
Love you too.
Yay. That's it. See, it's fun. It's so fun. I really want to talk healthcare, immunizations, private school.
Yeah.
Because we both went to public school. Our kids are in private school. But those are all things that we could just do, whenever.
Okay.
But because I got all the time in the world. But yeah, I'm like, there's so many things. That's what I told Priscilla too. I'm like, there are so many things I could talk to you about, but we're just going to keep it right here and then go from there.
Thanks for joining us today for the Sprinter Mom with Lashes On podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. We'll see you next week.